Hey, this is the first ever recording of
The Fire You Can't Put Out.
Right. So we're going to have, this is, for now at least, our regular crew of this show. Now, I'm talking because for some reason I'm talking. But really, I mean, the three co-hosts right now, we are equal.
Yes.
So my name is Kevin. I also have a music podcast, but let's not plug it over here. But there are some housekeeping stuff later that we can talk about, but not now. So the one that sounds really enthusiastic is Melvin.
My name is Melvin.
Hey.
Hello.
And we also have Angela.
My name is Angela.
Hey.
Hi.
So let's for things number one, let's talk about how this show actually came into being. I think it started just like everything in the world today. It started on Facebook.
Right.
So there's one day. Well, okay. Let me tell a story. So I think it's okay to tell everybody we are based locally here in Spokane, Washington. I think the housekeeping thing that I was going to talk about is for now, I think Open Sky Radio in San Francisco is going to distribute our show.
Okay.
And they have a lot of listeners in Hong Kong. So I don't think even people in the United States know where Spokane is.
I usually think it's Seattle.
Right,
I didn't until I moved here.
Right. So, oh my God, you're late. So, I'm here. So, Google Spokane, Spokane, and figure out where we are. But we are based here locally in Spokane. So, my story for now to tell is, I used to listen to a lot of progressive radio. And in Seattle would be 1090, which is actually they're going to shut that down too.
That's going away.
January 1st.
Yep.
Right. And locally here in Spokane, there is used to be a progressive radio station with 1280.
1280 KPTQ.
So everything is good, and we're listening to until one morning, it just went away. No warning whatsoever.
If I may, a brief synopsis.
Go ahead, sir.
Of talk radio, and we were rapping about this earlier. Back during the 80s, the conservatives figured out, I mean, as they have with all media, that if they get themselves on the air, they can. And talk radio was, people listen to it from time, but it wasn't a really, really big thing.
Right.
Limbaugh is much as I don't care for him, he's the pioneer in that field.
Absolutely.
And from that came other, and so it was dominated by nothing but conservatives. Liberals got on that boat late.
Very late.
Very, very late. And when they did, it was Al Franken that brought it forward.
Right.
A lot of
this
people,
is like 04, right before the
Air America.
Exactly.
Right.
Not a lot of people took it seriously because they go, "Oh, he's a comedian,"
right.
And he's Hollywood and liberals and comedians. They're all the same,
right.
And of course, Air America went by the wayside. But what it did start was showing that there's an audience for progressive talk radio.
Right.
Okay, and fast forward to all these years later, there's a huge listening base for progressive talk radio, as much as they're trying to say that there's not, because we just won an election, so we're obviously out here. Okay, and so here in Spokane, we lost our station in March of this year.
And it just disappeared. There's no warning.
At noon.
Well, which is traditionally what happens with any station that switches formats. I've noticed they don't give warning. When KPOJ lost their station, there were murmurs, but it just happened. There was no warning.
KPOJ down in Portland.
Down in Portland, right.
I think that morning talk personality was told that day when he finished his show, we're done.
The Friday before, which is Carl Wolfson.
Right.
Okay. So the Friday before, he finished his show, he kicked back, he pulled off his headphones, and we just won the election that week, and he goes, what a great week. I had such great shows this week. And he said his boss walked in the studio and had just the look of death on his face. Right. And he goes, I knew at that moment that I was canned. Yeah,
that's incredible.
That's how.
Which is a shock too, because KPOJ is pretty huge.
Well,
I mean, they're not like a station with like one small transistor or something.
Right.
They are huge. They have a huge following. I think Tom Hartman used to do
a morning
Right.
show from KPOJ
Right.
as well as an afternoon show.
Right.
That was his. That's why
genesis.
That's why they
Okay.
called themselves the Plymouth Rock of Progressive
Right.
Talk, because they really were. And Tom Hartman is still the biggest liberal talk radio host.
Right.
So we lost our station here, of course, without warning. But they shut it down. They shut it down at noon, and they replaced it with a country music station. Now, classic country. I don't want to disparage it.
Right, and then over here, KPOJ, it turns sports.
They turned it to sports. And by the way, I tune in from time to time, and I will actually hear them say on the air, "This is day 4 of Fox Sports Radio here in Portland, Oregon."
Right.
And there's a huge backlash. Of course.
I love sports as much as anybody, but how many sports stations do we need in the same market?
That's it. There are already several sports stations in in Portland, and here there were already plenty of country stations.
Right.
So they just added another of the same one, and I seriously doubt they're peeling off people from those other stations.
Right.
Anyway, so they say, well, country music is more lucrative here. I talked with the gentleman over the phone, I'd say probably about a month after our station here shut down. Right. And he said, and I said, there's already so many country stations in Spokane. Why do we need another one? I actually said that to him. And he said, well, with being able to go online now, he said it made sense to fill a niche that we can online. Well, because he said there's no classic country stations online. He says, so even though we're running locally here, he says, our biggest listeners are all online.
Right.
We did this to get the online listeners, and we have them now. He said, we had Progressive Talk Radio for 7 years and never made a profit, which is insanely hard for me to believe. That's 7 years of a failed ship. I don't believe that. But that's what was told to me, and so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
But there's a market. I mean, my gosh.
They touted for their advertisers that you have 8,000 dedicated listeners.
That's what they said. Right. 8,000 dedicated listeners on there.
It has to be more than that.
Well, people that rotate in and out,
right.
They say 8,000 individual listeners. I mean, some people would just listen on weekends, and some people would listen late at night. And they said, but they said you'd have 8,000 individual sets of ears.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Which is ridiculous because we just been through an election, and I do a lot of canvassing around here, and usually people who voted for the president are fairly passionate about politics.
Right.
And a lot of them, I know for sure, a lot of them listen to progressive radio.
Yeah.
And now the president just won the election by 52%?
Yeah,
4 points.
3 or 4 million
So you figure,
votes more than
you figure there has to be a whole lot of people listening to progressive radio. If they are saying that we're not earning enough money, well, it's really hard to believe.
Those of us that are more conspiracy minded, and I was amongst them when it happened. I went as soon as it went off the air. I went, this is an election year.
Right.
It did seem very weird.
I went
timing.
right to that, and I go and Bain owns, or they're running right now for a fee, obviously, Clear Channel. And I went, it's a political move that they made. And then when I called the station, obviously the boss there goes, no, it's not a political move. It's just, we wanted to make some money. And now we're making some money, he said. I said, really? Already? Within a couple of weeks you're making money? He goes, yeah, we're finally now making some money. And I know that with any startup, and the most famous, obviously, for losing money is Fox. Because for their first 5 years, they lost $100 million a year. It takes a long time to establish something.
They can't afford it, I
But
guess.
of course, he was telling me here, we're already making money. No, how'd you build a listening base? He goes, well, online.
Right.
The iHeartRadio app, which, by the way, as soon as I heard that, I dumped it off my phone. I
have
the iHeartRadio app.
iHeart is owned by Clear Channel.
It's Clear Channel.
It is.
It's all, and if you look at the maker, it says right there, Clear Channel Communications. I didn't. I just go, another radio app, because I listen to a lot of radio. So I put it on my phone and I dumped it.
Right. So anyway, so go back to why this podcast come into being. It started with the Facebook page that is Save 1280.
Right.
Which is
the
local
it was originally called Save 1280.
ex-progressive radio station here. So I guess the idea is, I think it's a long shot that we're going to get progressive radio back into Spokane. I think other places, Seattle or Portland, they might have a better chance of doing that. But locally here in Spokane, I don't think so.
Well, there's one on Facebook. They have a Facebook page for this radio station. I think I've brought it up a couple of times on our page. They actually lost theirs a long time ago. So they're in Ohio. Right. And I would like to say that I can remember exactly the city. I want to say Cincinnati or Cleveland. I can't remember which. But they lost theirs, and so they went completely voluntary. So like KYRS here in Spokane,
right.
They're an all-volunteer group.
Right.
They actually just announced the other day that they have lost their station again because they can't maintain it as it's on a voluntary basis and trying to get sponsors and things like that. So this has its genesis back quite a ways.
You mean the Facebook page?
No, the actual losing of Clear Channel Progressive Radio.
Right. So it's not an accident, really.
No.
Immediately after losing the station, we all went on just as individuals and protested. We occupied their page,
right.
Which eventually led to them shutting it down. But what happened was, so we did that for about a week, and then my sister started a protest page.
Right.
And so where we could all go and talk, and I would blog at the end of the day, and I go, "Great job out there, everybody!" Essentially smacking everyone on the backside, going, "Yeah, you did a great job protesting on their page, and get back out there, just keep letting them hear from us." And then I, just being the loudest, I now run the page, and I run the page with Angela. My sister's not even involved in it anymore.
I think it's okay to say this because, I have a music podcast, so I have everything, all the equipment ready to go.
Right.
And then when I look at the page and thinking that getting the station back in Spokane is pretty much almost impossible.
I know.
So I'm like, well, why don't we do our own little outfit over here? Why don't we make our own show? Because that's the easier way to do it.
Right.
I think so. I emailed it. I emailed a couple of you guys. I think when I start something.
Yep.
So here we are. Right here. So and I think having a grassroots voice is really important because even for the existing progressive radio station, wonderful stuff. Tom Harmon or Ed Schultz. I'm not a huge Ed Schultz kind of guy.
Neither am I. Yeah.
But at least he's loud, so that's good.
And
right?
he's very pretty.
Randy Rhodes and Mike
Stephanie Miller,
and Mike Malloy. They aim at a really a national kind of audience, and they. I think I can safely say that they're aiming at catching all.
Right.
The big issues. And I think having a grassroots and a more local-oriented voice, in this is important too.
Right.
Because even the canvassing. One of the thing I've noticed, when doing so much canvassing a few months ago, is we have to go out and kind of gauge. We talk to people and kind of gauge, if they are they will vote for the president. Yeah. President Obama, by the way.
Of course.
And aren't we happy that we're not saying President Romney?
President-elect Romney.
But a lot of times, even locally, right, we got bombarded with political ads locally.
Yep.
Yes.
But a lot of people, even they're on outside, they still. Are you going to maybe support the president? It's like, absolutely. So are you going to support Jay Inslee as the governor? And they're like, what? Who? So even and then it get progressively worse, right. As in the local senator. Most of the people know Maria Canwell, and
right.
Yes,
this time around. But if you go down the ticket, it get worse, right? Because it's like
most of them didn't know who Rich Cowan was.
Right. Yes. So it's like it's like they're like, well, Kathy McMorris, she's not very good, but who's running against her?
Who's the guy running against her?
So you have to run around and say a bunch of stuff. So I think a lot of times, yes, the progressive voices, even though they're getting shut down little by little. They are wonderful, but they focus on a bigger picture. So they don't have the local flavor. that
Right.
we are aiming at, I guess.
Right. Even when we had our station, they had no local shows.
Right,
But
right.
there's measurable proof that progressive talk is still growing. Because Stephanie's now on TV, Ed's on TV,
Yeah.
Tom's
But
on
current,
TV.
current is,
And
is,
Rachel Maddow started.
And
on
Rachel
it.
Maddow.
Of course.
And I said, well, they're putting them on television. I mean, there's obviously an audience.
But
there.
let's talk a little bit about this, because they always try to draw a equivalent between MSNBC and Fox, right?
Right.
But I don't even think it's that close, because how many stations are how many cable system actually carry Fox News, and how many cable system actually carry MSNBC? How many TVs on MSNBC?
Fox, their rate is way, way low to be carried on cable, so they're everywhere. If you've ever been to a Flying J, that's all they run at Flying J's. Any hotel room I go into is guaranteed to have Fox News, but only half of them have MSNBC.
Absolutely.
There absolutely is no equivalent. MSNBC has Joe Scarborough in the morning, a conservative, ex-senator. And there's nothing like that over on Fox.
No.
And they do the nighttime opinion programming just like Fox does. But see, Fox's coverage all day long.
Hannity had Combs. And Combs had to be the weakest.
Weakest? That's the point.
Progressive.
When they do bring somebody on that's a supposed liberal, they're such spineless jellyfish. They're just not. That's not a good person to put on.
The straight man for the other guy is all they are.
Right. I always wonder, too, because we are on this side, are we more forgiving to MSNBC? And, yes, I guess you can argue that it's hard for us to figure this out, like be totally fair and balanced. Right. Here's the word, fair and balanced on this. Right? because we are. And then we get into arguments about whether a person can be totally fair and balanced because a person has to have some kind of opinion, even though if you have no opinion, you have opinion, because you have no opinion is kind of a direction that you decide to take. Okay, well, let's not go into it. This is not a philosophy podcast. Wake up, everybody. So, but right. But I'm thinking
it speaks to something that bothers me about progressive radio as it appeared, for example, in Spokane.
Right.
Okay. In Portland, I like the idea that you had this radio personality first thing in the morning who was local.
Yep.
Right.
We did not have that in Spokane. That's one problem. The other thing I see is, and you're going to go into philosophy here.
Wow, no.
Sorry. But it's the difference between being conservative right now in this country. So I'm not talking about Goldwater Republicans.
Oh, that's very good.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Even they still have like a couple of those around. Like
we have a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
we have a couple of them.
Huntsman. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, and Buckley was one of the last, probably of that group. But to try and make an equivalency over in progressive talk radio for what is going on in conservative talk radio, I think is one of the problems. And so here I go. I'm going to be the devil's advocate because I think progressives, liberals want a little bit more substance.
Yep.
Right.
Particularly in, and I really do have to back up and choose my words carefully here. I'm not trying to paint all conservatives with the same broad brush, but the ones who are shouting the loudest, and can I just point at the Tea Party?
Yep.
And taking what's on Fox or conservative talk radio as gospel.
Right.
That's okay. We can't do the equivalent in progressive talk radio because it's not going to play as well. So that's why I think, for example, I am drawn to Tom Hartman.
Right.
Okay, because he's showing history. He's
facts
and discussion, and bringing in also people from the other opinion and actually talk. Count
actual debate.
Actual debate, and it is fair debate. They aren't shouting each other down usually. On Ed, I hear a lot of shouting down. Randy Rhodes, oh come on, she has a really good time with them, but to me it veers too much like being conservative radio to play well with progressives and liberals. I don't think that's why they tune in.
Right. Right.
if they are tuning in.
I mean, you're saying exactly what I was trying to say. A lot of times I'm trying really hard to put myself in a position that is as fair and balanced as possible to listen to listen to both ends of it. And Fox News seems to me they're just war cry after war cry. There's like they would grab hold of one thing and they just hammer on and on. And I sometimes I got to not used to that much anymore. But let's not really get into it. But I used to be forced to watch Fox News.
Oh.
Okay, and
I'm sorry.
A lot of times, some of the words they use is blatantly untrue, and they will just repeat it after and after, over and over again.
Because if you repeat it enough times, people will actually.
Right. And then when they, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
When they talk about the President Obama, right away they would use words that is.
Focus group tested.
Right.
That's exactly what they are. They
use
know what
words
they're saying. They're focus group
use
tested.
words that are easy to grab hold of.
Right.
And then it will just, and shall I say, it's a lot of dog whistle stuff.
It is.
I mean, news to everybody. We have a black president. Right?
Right.
So there are a lot of words they would use.
They call him urban,
lazy and urban.
They said,
exactly.
I can't remember who it was. Someone on Fox goes, he doesn't say Obama doesn't know what's going on because all he's doing is playing basketball all day.
Right. It's
not.
It's like
Or golf.
Oh no,
I
but
heard
no,
one too. But basketball.
See, they throw the basketball thing out, and people
I mean,
get that picture in their head.
Yeah, I'm sure if some of our listeners in Hong Kong are not following this so tightly. It's like Gingrich saying that Obama has a rhythm that he doesn't get.
Yeah,
stuff like that. You're like,
it.
oh, right. I know exactly what he's talking about, right? But anyway, I was saying that, on a conservative side, it seems like they're just doing war cry all the time.
Right.
Versus most of progressive radio. I mean, with their exceptions, they have the Randy. I think Randy is pretty good at this, but, Ed Schultz definitely. When Tom Hartman is talking, and I think Stephanie is. Because morning shows they have to be funny, right? They have to. It can't be morning. You cannot have like they
you
cannot
don't want
be
Tom Hartman with
no.
no.
Morning you cannot be reading like academic journal in the morning, right? So but
Unless you're like me.
Yeah, but Tom Hartman when he's talking when the show is going on, you can see like terabytes and terabytes of data running through,
right?
So, and same thing with MSNBC, right? Rachel Maddow, especially. I mean, you can see facts after facts. They'll just have stuff back up what they're saying. Yes, their ideas, their opinions are slanted. It's no question about it.
But in
right?
in her case, you have a Rhodes Scholar,
right?
Political science major, doctorate in political science.
Of course, that's elite. That's elite. Educated elite.
It makes sense
which is
to
what
have her talking.
President Obama is.
So
by the way.
un-American, exactly. It's like, well, he's a Constitution professor. He must not know anything about the
That's
Constitution.
exactly what they say.
It's so ridiculous, right? So I think well, circle back to I think having a grassroots voice is very important.
Can I just mention one race that would have benefited from
Go
that?
ahead, ma'am.
In the Valley, we had Amy Viviano,
right,
who was faced off, and I'm sorry to say that his name has escaped my memory because maybe I put it out of my mind.
Matt Shea.
And I probably can't say this on the air with actual fact, but there was, let's just put it this way, there was an incident on the highway that involved a gun.
Right.
And Matt Shea.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
You just Google it. Just Google it. You'll find it.
You'll find it. And the thing is, what came up at the last minute about her was that she had a spread in Playboy when she was in graduate school.
Yes, right. Let's talk a little bit about that. So let's give everybody a little bit background on this because I think, I know we went through a lot of stuff in just the first 23 minutes of the show, right? The first show, but let's go into this a little bit. So it's a local race.
Right.
It's for a state representative position, right? And it's very complicated. I mean, sorry again, listeners in Hong Kong, listeners in the U.S. would have some idea of what we're talking about. But we have two, basically
levels?
There are more, but in the big picture, there are two levels. There are state and there are federal.
Right.
President Obama and senator and representative would be one on the federal level, and there are state level that these candidates, when they get elected, they will go to for our states, Olympia. They would take care of state issues.
Yes.
And one of the and then again, it's kind of like the federal. There are two houses in the state.
There's representatives.
Senate, right?
Right.
So
and the governor.
Amy Biviano is one of in the past election, like a month ago, is the one of the candidate for a state representative position, right? So. Melvin, I know you don't live around here.
Well, I heard about the race, but I did that whole spread thing that escapes me. Yeah. But you know who else did? Scott Brown did one, and he got elected in Massachusetts.
Yeah. And it was exactly some of the things that were said on her page.
Right now,
why should Scott Brown can get past?
Scott Brown can get it because he's a dude.
I don't know if we. I think it's okay because it's already out there. It has been known that she did some pictures for Playboy. This is way back in the early 90s when she was in college, and
you can even find them,
right.
and they are not
that racy.
No,
and she's not. It's not full frontal nude.
It's Playboy, so you can figure out what it is.
It's classier,
but okay. So,
well, no, if she were in Hustler.
So, but this thing has been out there. It's on Playboy, right? It's not like this is a freaking secret or anything.
Right.
But it was splashed around immediately right before the election.
It was out. So I guess I'm not sure if she actually lost the election because of that.
I'm not either.
Just by itself, because the Valley is quite conservative.
And
there were Shea signs everywhere before that.
Right. I think it was more.
But the crazy thing about this part is Shea is not, shall I say, not quite a reasonable person, right? He's not a great candidate, and he has history of,
He did take a picture of himself standing in front of her home and paste it in on Facebook.
Yeah, stuff like
However
that.
you want to interpret that.
Right. It's
open to interpretation.
Right. So there are shortcomings with this candidate.
I think that's a nice way to say it.
Right. So, but because of the Valley being
conservative,
more redder,
he's going to skate in. Just being conservative.
But there are, and this is interesting too because, I think people on our side don't really care about Amy doing the pictures.
I actually went on her Facebook page and supported it. And said,
I don't think there's
anything. Doesn't bother me.
But it is overall politically a negative, unfortunately.
Right.
Because
she's a woman.
Because exactly. Right. So and we are unfortunately overall the U.S. is still pretty conservative. Right. So I
think we're a center left country, but what happens with things like that is I think that they completely mischaracterize it because they say, look, she did these pictures. Really? Because I'm pretty sure there's an awful lot of men, even conservative men, that are reading those publications because they sell pretty well.
Yeah.
So, but they like to find things like that, or they'll find out someone had like Jefferson Smith over in Portland. They found out he lost his license not once, not twice, but 7 times. And even though that did not. They say, well, it shows really poor judgment.
Right.
Even though he had served pretty well in the state house and was pretty popular, once it came out he lost his license 7 times. They went, well, and he goes, but he's got ADD, and he goes, well, I just have a lot of trouble focusing, and but I got it back. And they go, yeah, but you lost it 7 times, and it really counted against him. And then he started losing. Endorsements after that, and then it was kind of, but he was kind of favored to win, the Portland mayor. And then that came out, and it's like just something.
I mean, there's certain things that would just come out and have the bombshell kind of quality, that would just push a election to a certain direction.
Yes.
Even though I think in this case, the Shea Biviano race, I don't know if it is actually really that close to begin with. It's 60-40.
I don't know how close it was. I do know that her qualifications should speak far louder than Playboy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting because I think, again, we have because Open Sky has international listenership, I think there will be listeners to this show in other countries. Some of the other countries out there just don't care. I think this French president has we all know what happened there, right. and they are here and there. They are more risque stuff happening in politics over in other countries, but those tend not to be the deciding factors,
right?
In elections or politics.
Prime Minister of Italy is going to marry a woman who's
Berlusconi.
Yeah,
Berlusconi is going to marry somebody is she almost 50 years younger than
who
him?
used to hold bunga parties, which.
Right.
They're sex parties. Sex parties with largely underage girls. That was his thing. But the thing about Berlusconi came to power by buying all the media. Right. Started off as a lousy lounge singer, and made some money and got in with the mafia and bought a radio station, then a TV station. And
all these stuff, by the way.
Until he owned all the media in the country and then ran for prime minister.
By the way, all that stuff is documented.
Yeah, it's all documented.
We're not making stuff up. So... it's here in the U.S. I think it's weird that certain things becomes the deciding factor. And to be fair, the whole one of the big reason that President Obama, this is like back in 04, I believe. 04, 04, 06. He became senator.
06.
He became senator. It's because remember Ryan, the guy who used to be Jerry Ryan's husband, in Illinois. He has to drop out of the race because of something. So they got Ellen Keyes run against President then candidate Obama, right? So that's why it's like the president. I'm just calling Barack right now. Right. He kind of you can say he kind of cruised into the Senate position because the guy who ran against him just really weak, and then there was the whole sex scandal went on with Jack Ryan, I think his name is, and this is way back. I can Google it right now, but we don't remember that. So, but it's really weird to me that in the U.S. Stuff like that, like the Biviano thing with something she did 20 years ago that can actually come back to haunt her.
Then we are the country who impeached a president.
Right. True. Yes.
Who that notwithstanding, who in their younger days can say that they did absolutely nothing dumb or questionable?
Right. So they are. It's really a weird place that we live in, and I think one of the really weird quality of American life that we're going to see. You see that you like that segue?
Right?
Nice segue.
You know what? We frown.
Let me tell you. Sorry. Let me
go
share
ahead.
with you a story.
I think you might be going in the same direction. So go ahead.
I think there might be people who listen to my music podcast, and they kind of know who I am already. I grew up in Hong Kong. We worry about many things in Hong Kong when we were kids. Many things. Worry about if that girl is going to like me. Worry about are my pants clean. That kind of stuff. Worry about whether I can actually shoot a basketball or play ping pong correctly, so I won't be making fun of. Or worry about whether I'm going to turn in a homework. Many wonderful and also wonderful things. The only thing that we almost never worry about is getting shot.
Right.
On the street or at school. And right now, when we're taping the show, we are at the last couple of weeks of December. And just a week ago, we had this insane tragedy went down in Connecticut, where a gunman went into a school and shot the place up and killed 20 kids.
20 kids and 6 adults, all of them first and second graders.
Right. So we're going to tackle this insane issue
in America.
In the first show,
we frown upon sex and nudity, but we do not frown upon violence for whatever reason, and that's really different of us.
So let's talk a little bit about it today.
Okay.
I know this is going to be a long discussion, and we're not going to resolve anything.
Of course not.
Today.
Last Monday, during the busy Christmas shopping season,
Right.
there's a shooting at the Clackamas Mall in
That's
Portland,
before,
Oregon.
even before the Connecticut.
And then that Friday, this is last week, and then that Friday at 9:30 in the morning, a guy armed to the teeth, high-capacity magazines and AR-15s, went into Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, and
I'm pretty sure even if
he
we
let
have,
off probably about 100 rounds.
Right.
Most of those kids were dead when the first round hit him, and then he still put several more rounds in each one of it. It's a pretty gruesome thing.
Right. And, we went in Hong Kong, right? You can't just walk into a sporting good place to get a gun. You can't do that. You can't, I don't even think you can actually buy a gun. Police, of course, they have guns issued to them. And I think you have to have a lot of proof that you need a weapon. And you know what? And guess what? Let's not call it guns or, whatever. Let's call it a weapon. Because there's only one reason for a gun to exist, is to either destroy or kill. I'm sorry to say that.
Whether it's human or wildlife.
Right.
The false equivalency I've been hearing all week is about cars.
Right.
And people say, well, cars kill people, we should get rid of cars. Well, cars serve another purpose, though. Guns serve one.
Right,
They
right.
kill, and that's it.
If you really want to go down that road, how many regulations do we have about cars?
Tons! I have my CDO, which is a commercial driver's license, and I had to go through tons of training, and I had to pass a lot of pretty difficult tests to get that.
And you can get pulled over if your taillight's out.
Yep.
If you fail to use your turn signal, your child has to be secured a certain way in a car seat. We could go on and on.
Right.
The worst thing about what happened last Friday, and after all these tragedies, which are more and more so, especially since the assault weapons ban expired back in 2004, is with all these shootings, they say this many people were killed, this many people were injured.
Right.
With the mall shooting, even with the theater shooting.
Right. And the theater, right? There's
in Sandy Hook, there were none.
Right.
Everybody died. There was no, these people are killed and these people are injured. They all died.
Right.
So the shootings are getting more lethal.
Right. I mean, they're aligned a whole history of this. I mean, the most famous one is Columbine. And then after that, you have the Virginia Tech
And then
one.
Virginia Tech. And
so over and over again. And there was actually
We had
another
in Moses
one.
Lake
Right.
a few years
just
later.
locally.
Yeah.
And there was actually another one in Pennsylvania yesterday.
Yes, there was.
Right,
Right as
people died,
LaPierre
I missed that.
was
Wayne
finishing, Wayne LaPierre was
Right.
finishing his statement, and in Pennsylvania, 4 people were being killed by a gunman on the highway.
Right. And the whole term of going postal is actually
In America, it is.
I used to be a postal worker.
right. So here's what I'm thinking. Compared to what kids have to deal with these days, whether or not, let's not even go into whether we're talking about inner city or suburb or wealthy suburb, because you know what. I don't think I'm saying anything offensive here. Newtown, Connecticut,
It's a beautiful little
pretty
suburb.
It's a pretty well off
Yes, it is.
suburb, right? And one can argue, and I think Al Sharpton actually did argue this, that this actually happened almost daily. This is a daily occurrence, with weapons and guns on the streets. This is a daily occurrence.
80 of them per day.
For inner city kids. And inner city kids, most of them are black and brown.
Right.
And I'm not. I mean, this is a dangerous territory. I'm not downplaying the Newtown tragedy, but yes, if something like this has to happen in order to. This is a really, really cruel way to say it, but if something like this happened, hopefully the almost cruel to say positive that come out of this is something has to give here. Something has to change.
It's like a line that has to be crossed,
right?
maybe, Kevin? I don't know.
Kids, what they have to deal with these days. Compared to my childhood seems like a luxury. Because we don't even have to worry about that. Yes, they are random. Sometimes there are like shootings in Hong Kong, but there's like big time robbery. They're robbing a jewelry store. Yes, they would have somebody would be walking around with a gun, right? But that is rare occurrence compared to guns are literally all over the place in the United States. It's everywhere.
We have almost more than we have people now. We're 319 million population in the United States. We have over 300 million guns, with 4,000 more coming online every day.
Right. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, this is going to make a lot of people angry. But
I have a couple.
Right.
A couple
Right.
of things. First of all, we've got a profit-driven media, and I don't want to call it political, but what happens, I mean, obviously they have to sell ads, and they do whatever it takes to get people to run to the TV, and of course it bleeds, it leads, and so they make these really polarizing, really strong statements. Be afraid of this. Be afraid of that. Right, and especially in a lesser educated country where education is almost demonized.
Right.
These people don't know how to respond, and so they go, "Well, I can get a gun. That's pretty easy to get. It's easier to get a gun than it is to rescue an animal from a shelter. It's just, they can go to a gun show.
Right.
They don't. There's no background checks.
Right.
Felons aren't supposed to have guns, but they're not.
Different states have different deals going on.
Yes,
I mean,
it's state by state, and honestly, if they are legitimate gun dealers at a gun show, they are supposed to do a background check.
Right.
But what is that background check? Now that's really interesting. I've got an article I want to pull up here in a second.
Okay, go ahead.
By the judge who just sentenced, and I'm not going to use the shooter's name, because I agree. I think that's one of the things that's wrong in our country is that we celebritize.
Right, and that's
the mass murderers. Right. Okay, so the guy who was responsible for the shooting in Arizona.
Yeah.
The one that actually did not kill, but wounded badly, Gabby Giffords.
Right.
And I don't know how many other people, including some children.
Right.
All right. He was just sentenced within the last month.
Right.
That's how long our legal process in this country takes. He was, the judge who sentenced him is a conservative, NRA member, gun owner, and he's got some things to say about it. Right. One of the things that maybe the audience in Hong Kong should be familiar with is the idea in this country we have this thing called the Bill of Rights, and the second right in, number 2, the amendment,
the Second Amendment,
is gun ownership, okay? And it has a history of how it's interpreted.
Right, it's up for debate.
It's up for debate. Now, the interesting thing about debating over interpretation of our Constitution is that conservatives in this country have for a long time seen themselves as originalists. So the original wording, the original interpretation, that's what we go with.
Almost like the Bible.
Right. It's like a literal. Okay, and progressives, liberals are seen as the people who are trying to interpret it all the time. So that's where you get this whole notion of activist judges and so forth and so on.
Right.
Interesting thing with the Second Amendment. Second Amendment, up until the 1970s, here was the emphasis. Okay, and the amendment reads like this: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right.
Up until the 1970s.
Yeah.
The courts had found that the first part, militia, was the important part of that Second Amendment.
Right.
In the 1970s, the NRA, together with people close to the Reagan administration, got behind a push to make the second part of this clause, the second part of that amendment, the part that is seen as the most important. And that is where we get the growth of more and more gun ownership and more violent guns and more, and it's probably a wrong thing to say, violent guns. But when I say that, I'm talking about guns with the capacity of our shooter the other day. Okay, when you can shoot off 30 rounds, just like this, then you can kill a lot of people before you have to reload. And so people don't have a good way, despite calling for arming of teachers, and we can talk about that in a second. They don't have a chance. And in that theater, where there was so much noise and confusion, someone kept saying, that's the theater in Colorado, that if somebody had been armed, they could have taken the guy out. How would that have happened?
They're just crazy. just crazy.
I want to riff on what you said a little bit with the NRA changing that. The original idea, and they always talk about the founding fathers. The founding fathers obviously wanted us to have guns. That's the Second Amendment. But I believe the idea with the Second Amendment was because Jefferson and some of the founding fathers, they didn't want standing armies because they said if we have standing armies, the potential for misusing them is going to be so great. And yeah, it obviously has, because we went into Iraq without debate, went into Afghanistan without debate. We're going to bomb this.
Let's
we're going
go
to bomb
back to
it.
Vietnam.
Right, exactly. And they bombed the hell out of everything with it. But so the idea was have everybody trained on guns, but then the guns go into an armory. And when there's a problem, we take the guns out of the armory. Right. Everyone knows how to use them, and then they go back.
It's a different.
It wasn't
time and
every
place.
man has an armory. That was never the idea.
I mean, this is not absolutely. I'm sorry.
But from the 1970s on, this push, and where it ended up was in the Supreme Court in 2008, District of Columbia versus Heller.
Right.
Okay, decided that individual rights view of the Second Amendment is what we need to embrace.
Right.
I want to say something.
Well, I mean, first of all,
Go ahead.
this is not an original thought because I heard it somewhere and I totally agree. When the Constitution was written, the Bill of Rights,
right.
and the Constitution was just like 200 somewhat years
200
ago, almost
some odd
30.
year, right.
It's a different time and place.
Right.
The weapons that they're talking about then, it's not even close to the same as
It was a
what we
metal
have
ball.
today. Right.
You had to stuff it into a
Yeah,
barrel.
I
you
know
had
it's
to
like a
hammer it
minute.
down.
Okay, those are
Which
just
is that funny moment
just-
with Palin,
It
right,
took a
right.
five
Just
minutes.
which he had Paul Revere writing his
Right.
horse. And
It took 5 minutes to load a
just
gun.
for a very very rudimentary entry level knowledge kind of thing. Watch the movie Glory.
Yeah.
There's a scene in there that the sergeant major or somebody actually teaching these soldiers how to shoot weapon, right? And it's a crazy process. The musket, it's a crazy process of loading.
And they
the
weren't very
barrel.
accurate.
No, they're
No.
not. I mean, it's like this crazy statistics. How many pounds of lead is
Exactly.
is used to kill one soldier, which is awful thing to say, right? But it's true. I mean, so it's a different time and place, and the objects they're talking about is a completely different thing. And if they want to use a straight definition of what's in the Second Amendment,
Right.
that's crazy. That's insane. Well, okay, go ahead.
I want to say something, and I want to make this a matter of record.
Right.
The Fast and Furious program, which is a government program that was supposed to track guns, and was initially, by the way, started under the Bush administration. Now, the reason that we had Fast and Furious was because they were, of course, there's a huge drug war going on down in Mexico, and so the cartels would come up to America, and gun laws are so lax. And I wanted to mention this earlier because you mentioned Arizona. Right. The gun laws are so lax in Arizona, you can walk in and say, I want 50 AR-15 guns. They're not allowed to ask you what they're for, and you don't have to say. And you can walk, and it's state law, you can walk out into the parking lot and say, I've changed my mind, I don't want the guns, and you can sell them to somebody. So the idea with Fast and Furious was to start tracking those guns. Get the seller, follow the guy down to Mexico, right? Of course, a lot of those guns made it. And then a border agent was killed, and they said, well, it was a government program that failed, and that's why the guy got killed. No, we weren't able to track him because the gun laws are so loose, and yet it happened all the time. Right. Someone would go in, buy 100 guns, pay $30,000, $50,000, whatever it was, walk out in the parking lot, and they would say, well, I just don't want the guns anymore, hand them off to somebody who would pay them 2 or 3 times what they just paid for them.
Right.
And that's how so many of our guns are in Mexico, a part of the drug war now.
Besides all the politics and all the political and all the policy argument, I think a lot of arguments that a lot of things that are being said out there, especially this week, it's completely insane.
Yeah.
As in, there was, you can totally Google it, but there were commentators out there and questioning why aren't the kids rushing the gunman?
Right.
Rushing the gunman.
Right. Why aren't, or if the principal or teachers,
right.
if they have a gun. Well, first of all, go back to the Colorado shooting. It's in a theater. It's in a dark theater. Do you know how hard it is to hit a, well, okay, I think a lot of people get the idea of shooting, hitting, killing, mutilating people's body. I think a lot of people get that idea from video games.
Yes.
Get the idea from movies, which there's no consequence. And
You just get another life?
No, you know, there is a lot of more dimensions to this than they can see in a movie or video game.
Right.
The first thing I can think of is the smell. It's not a pleasant smell.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, with, man, I'm going to get into a lot of trouble with so you're against video games now.
No.
A little bit, because when I see video games, the main theme is just mutilating people's bodies. You know, war is not a fun thing.
No.
It's not war. Well, number one, war is not the answer.
My 88-year-old father-in-law would agree. He was at the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the other
Right.
thing. Anyone that's been in war doesn't think it's glorious.
Yeah,
Anyone who is not does.
I have not been in war, but if you talk to you know some groups of immigrants even in our area,
yes.
they are here. They are here primarily because of certain policies and wars and armed conflict. If you ask them, they usually just won't talk about it. But, you know, if you ask them, they would tell you it's not a pleasant thing. And the thing I notice is, you know, when you are just playing video game, you're just shooting up the place on the video game, a couple of things missing. The smell. You're missing the smell.
Decomposition.
Right. No, well,
gunfire.
During a war,
Right.
I mean, burning metal.
Right.
That's not a fun smell, and that smell tends to stay with you, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is, you know, when you shoot somebody, it's a really nasty thing.
It's a permanent decision.
Right.
It's done.
The other person.
You don't go back.
It's like
reset.
there's one
It's
line
done.
in as much as I'm disappointed with Clint Eastwood, right, these days. And you know, Google that, the empty chair, blah blah. But I love that movie. Well, yes, we're going back to movie again.
But that's okay.
I love what is that movie that
The Unforgiven?
The Unforgiven. There's a line right in there, something like, you know, when you shot a man, you take away everything that he got and what he will ever get. It's so true. But when you're playing a video game, you don't feel that.
No.
You know.
But if you talk to, you know, somebody who fought, say, in World War II. So my father-in-law is haunted by the fact that he took so many lives.
Right. A lot of these veterans won't talk about it.
Exactly.
Won't even go into it.
No, for a long time he did not talk about it, and it's only in the last few years he talks about how haunting that is.
Right.
And he has to tell himself, well, it was kill or be killed. But that's very cold comfort.
Right.
Very cold comfort.
I took a long time
That's a good
ago.
way of putting it.
Right. A long time ago, I took a course in Vietnam War. And we actually have Vietnam vets talk about what they experienced. It's really hard for them to actually talk about it. I mean, well, anyway, so, well, we are, I mean, again, this is not an original piece of thought, but, you know, we are so desensitized in terms of being cruel, in terms of being, we're so desensitized by movies and video games. And then, yes, we go into the whole argument, you know, First Amendment. Is that an expression you don't want to as a liberal? Well, why are you're liberal, right? Why do you want to control thoughts and control how people? Yes, that's a fine line, and I'm struggling with that.
Nobody wants
I'm struggling with that, but I think really, do we need? Again, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble even with my buddies. But really, do we need video games that depict just picking somebody apart? You know, physically?
I honestly, I don't think we do. But at the same time, I don't see getting rid of those as important as changing our relationship with not only guns but with violence.
Right.
If I may go full circle here to what I said earlier, it's not violence isn't frowned upon here. You know, MMA is huge here. You know, people beating the piss out of each other.
I'm sure that's another. That could
fun.
be. You know what? That could be another show.
That could be another show.
That could be another show.
Okay, now that's going to get me in a lot of trouble.
We could also talk about movies.
Right.
Okay. We went to see the latest Bond.
Right.
All right. And you sit through how many previews?
Right.
And how many of those previews have violence at the epicenter?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it's just over and over and over.
Right.
And you really are desensitized,
right.
I think. So where do we take this? What do we do with it?
I don't know. This is a long discussion.
Can I give you the words of this judge?
Please.
Yes, go ahead.
Larry Allen Burns, federal judge, federal district judge in San Diego.
Right.
He is the one who's responsible for having sentenced the man who shot the people in Tucson, Arizona. So he's a gun owner. Right. I say all this as a gun owner I say it as a conservative who was appointed to the federal bench by a Republican president. I say it as someone who prefers Fox News to MSNBC and National Review Online to Daily Kos. I say it as someone who thinks the Supreme Court got it right in the District of Columbia versus Heller when he held that the Second Amendment gives us the right to possess guns for self-defense. That's why I have mine.
Right.
I say it as someone who, generally speaking, is not a big fan of the regulatory state.
Right.
I say it even as someone whose feelings about the NRA mirror the left's feelings about Planned Parenthood.
Right.
It has a useful advocacy function in our deliberative democracy. Okay? And so I'm just pulling pieces out of this. I'm trying not to misquote him.
Right. No, I think
okay. Right. But he says, where is it? Bring back the assault weapons ban and bring it back with some teeth this time, because it had no teeth last time. Ban the manufacturer, importation, sale, transfer, and possession of both assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
Right.
Don't let people who already have them keep them. Right. Don't let ones who have been manufactured stay on the market. I don't care whether it's called gun control or gun ban. I'm for it.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
This is a guy who venerates all the things I just listed ahead of that. Okay? This is a guy who actually gets it.
Right.
A conservative.
Everything seems sensible.
And he is shocked by what's happening now. That he's. I don't want to say he's joining our side.
No, he's not.
Well, I don't think this is one issue.
It's not
but he's being sensible, and that's what needs to happen.
Right.
People really
need to quit taking sides.
Well, they react and overreact when it comes to the gun thing. They go, "Well, I need my guns because when we have to fight against the government, you're not going to fight against the government.
Right.
The government's got Black Hawk helicopters and Hellfire missiles. You're not fighting the government.
Yeah, how are you going to fight them?
And if you really want to fight the government." I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but do it legislatively.
Right.
Call your senator, your House member, or whatever. Call your president. They've all got phone lines. Pick it. That's a better way than saying no when they come.
Occupy.
That's better than saying, well, when they show up at my door, I've got guns. Actually, they show up at your door, they're going to just drop a bomb on you.
I mean,
but the government's not coming for us either. That's a very paranoid thing.
I mean, the thing is, using violence to solve problems like this, I thought we're over that. I mean, I guess I'm wrong.
Well, and after LaPierre's comments.
Joke of a statement.
Right.
Okay, so Amy Davidson in the New Yorker says, this is where gun advocacy ends, with a right to bear arms, but with an insistence that the rest of us have an obligation to do so.
Right.
In the name of a misreading of the Second Amendment, teachers and children are conscripted in a gunfight.
Right.
A movement that frames its cause as liberty imposes fear and service only to the gun.
Right.
And this is my bigger point about what's going on in this culture of violence and this gun advocacy is tyranny is already here. It came wrapped in the American flag, and it's called gun advocacy and Second Amendment rights.
Right.
That's a good way of putting it. I can't finish that. That's good.
Well, there were one hope there. I mean, everything seems bleak and grim, but one hope there is the assault weapon ban that you mentioned is authored. I believe is authored by the vice president, then Senator Joe Biden.
Yes,
and the president just put him in charge.
Yes, he did.
Of the commission to really try to do something about
the
this.
Biden, as
the Biden is like they call him.
Yeah.
It's Feinstein's legislation. Who, by the way, Feinstein, who replaced Harvey Milk after he was assassinated in San Francisco.
Right.
So she's really passionate about this, and now she's working with the Biden on it. So I think we might get a decent piece of legislation. But of course, it's going to come to the Hill, and people are going to be screaming that their freedoms are going to be stolen.
This is the first show.
Yes.
Of what's the show title again?
The Fire You Can't Put Out.
Right. And we don't have a crystal ball.
Of course not.
But even though I have one, but it doesn't do anything. It's out there. So, but I'm just kidding. But we can look into the future. But I think there is some hope here. It's not everything. It sounds bad. It's not all bleak. And hey, first show we talk about a lot of stuff. It's just 1 hour.
Yeah.
We talk about how the show came into being.
Yes.
And blah 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 blah. And then the whole radio station going
right.
on. And then finally I don't think we really solve any problems today on the gun. But I think. But I think it's just think about how we live our daily life. It's just insane. I mean, I hope 20 or 30 years later, when we look back, we're like, man, those are crazy
Those are
days.
crazy
And
times that I would never want
I
to go
hope
back
it's
to.
not. Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
it ain't like
Hope
that.
we
no
can
more,
say that.
right? Well, for the first show, this is a lot of stuff.
Yes.
So, again, I'm Kevin,
I'm Melvin.
And I'm Angela.
and see you here again soon.